What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I want to thank you guys for tuning in because today's an important topic. So in last week's video, we did the suspension work onto the 1990 EF Hatch. As you can see, the car is lowered. It's currently riding on Skunk 2s, and I honestly love it. It feels really good, very solid. So I'm very happy with that. I pulled off the rest of the suspension from the CRX, and the only thing that I really had left was these control arms. The reason I pulled these off is because maybe about a year ago, I installed hard race urethane bushings into these control arms. So they were kind of just sitting on that car, and I was like, you know what? It's time to put them on this car because I'm going to be starting to use it. So that's where we're going to jump into today's video, guys. So I'm going to give you guys a lot of important details on how to put a B16a into your EF. Number one, this car is currently converted to an SI. And when I say that, it's basically pinned out ECU wise. I already converted it when I put the D16A6, which is from a CRX SI. And if any of you guys know, those are fuel injected. So I went with a monotech harness, and I'm gonna show you guys, I'm gonna pop the hood real quick. Currently running a bone stock D16A6. This is out of a CRX SI that I picked up out in Long Island, matching tranny. This motor is currently multi-port fuel injected, which is running 4 injectors. If you have an EF that is either a standard model 4-speed or a DX, which they come 5-speed, you're probably running on the dual point system, which is basically 2 injectors and a carburetor. So you're gonna have to convert to multi-port. And the best way to do that is, see this right here? Monotech. I purchased a harness that basically sends you a sub harness that pins out to the ECU, and you don't have to cut anything. It's basically like the rye wire setup you're gonna need to run the B16, and it makes everything really easy, really clean. The only thing I have to do is unplug it, and when I want to reattach it, it's simple, it's there, I don't have to cut anything. That made this really easy, and putting this motor in this car is going to be even simpler. So if your car is currently dual point, I suggest looking into monotech harnesses and ordering. Over here, I've got a lot of the parts laid out, and I want to just go over specifically what I used to make it work in this car and what I'm going to use to make it work in that car, so you guys can get an idea and just you can avoid some of the headaches that I had. And first off, I'm running a stock intake manifold. I basically cleaned it up, tried to paint it as best I could, get a new gasket, and make sure that everything is torqued down to spec. Don't have anything too tight, too loose. Basically, yeah, I wanted to clean it up, make sure all the gaskets were changed. I did take the throttle body off and paint that. B-series axles, I had to source out Integra axles, and basically these are what you're gonna have to use. You can use anything from, I would say, 90 to 93. I'm not 100% sure if you can use 94 to 2001. That's the DC Integra. These are from a DA. I know they work, so this is what I used. I have them labeled driver, passenger. So I had never had any issues with these. They went right in. Now, the thing with these is, if you're gonna get these axles, I matched the half shaft. This is what you're gonna need on one of the sides. You're gonna need this half shaft. So this is specific to the years, and I know for sure you're gonna need one from an Integra from 90 to 93. So they come with specific bolts. You can't use just any bolt because it's built out from the head. So there's no vibrating, and then it's threaded on the bottom. So that's specific. You can't use anything but that. I wouldn't recommend it. You might have a vibration. It could cause an issue with the tranny later on. I don't know. This is what they recommend, and that's what I use. So as far as axles and intermediate shaft, I use everything DA. Now, with that being said, on the transmission, you have axle seals. You cannot use any axle seal from a B series. They have to be specific to the half shaft you're using. Now, since that's a B16 trans from a CRX in Japan, I don't have the half shaft. It didn't come with it, or whatever. I only got the motor and trans. I didn't get anything else. I had to source out this, and I have to match the axle seals to the half shaft. So make sure you get Integra axle seals. They're different from the B16 ones. So I had a big tranny leak and I was always wondering why, but later on I found out, credit to Young Static, I will give him that credit. He informed me that you have to match the half shaft, and well, we're going to take care of that because I do have brand new axle seals somewhere over here, wherever my little gasket pile is. But that's basically takes care of axles. Here's the oil pan with the new gasket and the Honda bond that we're going to be throwing on. It's just those four corners, so that's going to be going on. I want to refresh that because I had a serious oil leak because the shop that rebuilt the motor used silicone all the way around, I guess not knowing. Got a new Honda filter. Now, the next big thing I want to get into, guys, is mounts. Now, my experience with mounts, I wouldn't say I went with the cheapies, but I bought name brand, but they didn't really work out. So these were the original mounts I went with. These are called innovative mounts. Now, you might think, well, what's wrong with them? They look like they're fine. They look like everything's good. Well, why wouldn't anything work? Well, everything was good. Bushing feels good. Everything feels solid. Here's the Hasport one that I had to buy, and I'm going to show you why I had to buy this over this. Let's take a little walk over to the motor so I could show you guys specifically what I'm talking about. Now, pay attention because this is going to save you guys a lot of money and a lot of headache. So, you put this mount on, right? Looks like you're like, well, what's the problem? I'm going to show you the problem. See, this post mount bracket on these motors is not threaded all the way down. And the problem I ran into with this is when you put this mount on, and it goes all the way down, there's still some area that's not threaded exposed. So you have to basically build it up with washers, which I'm not a big fan of when it comes to motor mounts. You know what I'm saying? Like building it up with washers. No, I'm not a big fan of that. So I looked up these mounts. They cover the area that's not threaded. So you don't have to do some bougie freaking washer buildup set on your mounts. I always had an issue where I would hit the brakes and I felt like the motor was flexing or something was banging around. And because you have to bang out the inner engine bay area for the alternator, it's close anyway. So any type of movement that's in the mounts, it's gonna make a clunk noise. So save yourself the headache. Go with Hasport. They make good stuff for a reason, and it's expensive for a reason because you're gonna end up like me, and you're gonna have to do the build up washer game. And I'm not a big fan of that. So that was my whole thing with mounts, and avoid the issue. Moving on. Let's talk shift linkage real quick. Now, you can't use your single cam, obviously. A lot of you probably already know that. And back in the day, what people used to do is they used to take the Integra DA shift linkage and setup and cut it and weld it so that it would be shortened so that you could put it on these cars. Well, you don't have to do that anymore because now Hasport or Innovative or a lot of companies make B-series shift linkages for these EFs. So you don't have to cut anything. You don't have to rig anything. Everything comes measured. It comes with the right equipment. You don't have to make anything crazy. I'm using, a lot of people ask me what kind of shifter this is. This is a Fastline Performance Extended Shifter. Next up, ECU. So, I used a B16 JDM manual transmission ECU. Let me get the code exactly. I think this is a PR3. Yeah, PR3. I don't know if that's out of the Integra XSI or if it's the CRX, so I'm sorry, I don't have that information. You can use your stock radiator. I'm currently using Slim Fans. I do have an upgrade for it. It's the Skunk 2 Slim half rad. A little bit banged up, but I want to throw this in the car eventually and get the AC system working. I want to talk electrical a little bit so that way we can be on the same page. You're going to have to wire up VTEC and a few sensors. And what I did to take care of that problem was Rywire makes a harness where you run these pins out into the plugs that go into the ECU. One is for the knock sensor. 2 wires are for the VTEC. and one more is for the extra O2 sensor. You're gonna run two O2 sensors. My motor that I purchased came with two O2 sensors. I have B series headers from a 1990 Integra that I'm going to be using. I don't have aftermarket headers. I ran into a big issue, which is another reason why I'm changing my oil pan, because it's dented to high hell from having the headers too close. So right now I'm in the engine bay of the CRX where I actually took the B16 out of. And I just wanted to show you guys for an example or reference. This is the area you're gonna have to bang out for alternator clearance. It's right under the driver's side shock tower. I managed to get some good clearance. A few good swings is really all it takes with a good hammer, and that's one of the things I just wanted to mention. Make sure you do, because it's the weirdest thing for me. These cars came with the B16 in Japan, and then the ones that we came with obviously came with weaker motors. They came with the single cam, but yet you still have to modify when putting a B16 in. I don't understand what changed over here from the one in Japan, where you would have to bang that out as opposed to them coming with it stock from factory. I always found that interesting, but for anyone who doesn't know, yes, you do have to bang out the frame rail. Okay, so with that being said, if you guys are mindful and have the right parts, I think the swap should be relatively easy. I hope all these little tricks and tips and inside info can help you guys out and save some people some headaches. Just make sure you have name brand stuff. I wouldn't cheap out on a swap. That's like the one thing I'm against. And if something is wrong or you're not happy with it, even though it's name brand, just a lot of the times the manufacturer is willing to work with you or send you something that does fit your needs or whatever the problem may be. So if you're mindful of that, I think the swap process should be relatively easy. Right now, I'm gonna pull out this single cam, get the bay all prepped out, clean it up, give it a good power wash. Pretty much the B16 is ready to be dropped in. As you can see, I have all my parts laid out. I'm not gonna be filming on how to take this motor out or put the B16 in. It's pretty self-explanatory if you know how to take a motor out. The other one requires those mounts, and it goes in pretty much the same way. The one thing I didn't mention when I was talking about axles is you cannot just use any hub. You have to have a 1.6 CRX SI hub. That is the only hub that will accept the B series axles. Otherwise, you'll be screwed, because these 1.5s do not accept the same spleen count as the B series axles. So just be mindful of that. I forgot to mention that, but otherwise, everything else, if you're aware of, you should be fine. So I'm gonna pull this motor out, get the bay cleaned up. Stay tuned for the B16 running in this car. Okay. All right, guys, I just managed to escape the rain. As you can see, the car is running with the B16. I have completed the swap, and I want to say I'm very satisfied. I'm very happy with the way things turned out. When I first swapped it into the car, it wasn't starting, so I initially checked it and managed to track it down to being no spark. Made sure the main relay was clicking, everything was up to date with the wires, and narrowed it down to being a bad distributor. Ordered a distributor, plugs wires, started right up. She's been running pretty good. Everything's been sorted out with the antifreeze. I bled all the coolant, got everything pretty much tidied up, got a fresh oil change. Now there's one issue I am having with this car currently, and I want to go into a little bit of detail briefly because I didn't discuss it earlier in this video. Now, I might have mentioned before that I'm running a 1990 Integra exhaust header. Now, the B16a specifically came with 2 oxygen sensors. One of them monitors cylinders 1 and 4, while the other one, the secondary sensor, monitors cylinders 2 and 3. And apparently for this swap, I've done a little research, they can cause basically the car to run very lean or rich if they're not in the right position. And right now I'm having that issue where the car is bogging on acceleration on longer trips. So at about 3.5 to 4 grand right before VTEC, it starts to bog out as if it's not getting the correct air-fuel ratio. So I ordered 2 new sensors. I'll put the part number in the description below. I'm hoping that changes the bogging issue. I thought the distributor being bad before, when this was happening in the CRX, was the issue, but apparently not. Even with this new distributor, the car is still having a bogging issue. So I'm not getting a check engine light, even though I've run the car for over an hour. There's no check engine light, everything idles fine. So I'm just hoping that these new sensors correct the issue. Other than that, the car is a blast to drive. I want to put some videos out of the car actually driving and get some GoPro footage. This motor runs really well when it wants to run well. So hopefully soon the sensors come in and I can get some videos of it running correctly without it running so lean or so rich. I hope this video helps you guys. I hope it gives you some insight on the B16. If you plan on getting this motor, do not sell the headers it comes with. You will need those for the O2 sensors because I'm having that headache now. I wish I never sold it. But overall, the motor runs really well. I think down the line, I'm gonna convert to OBD1 if I can't fix this issue. OBD1 basically eliminates the secondary O2 sensor and you're able to tune the car to your liking. So we'll see what happens, but I appreciate you guys tuning in with me and viewing the video. If you've liked this video, just give it a thumbs up. If you're into the channel, consider subscribing. I hope you guys have a happy Halloween. Stay tuned for the next video. Be safe and have a good one.